Alright, first we are gonna talk about breakfast. This is actually a really good topic for me. This is one of my favorite topics because breakfast is probably my favorite meal of the day. So we usually have three meals: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Or maybe in your country there are more than three meals. But in most cultures, in most countries, we have some kinds of breakfast. So it is the first meal of the day. I want to tell you a little bit about American breakfast, the classic American breakfast. So people see a certain style of American breakfast when they watch American movies or TV shows, and for the most part, this image of American breakfast is pretty accurate. Also, what I could say is that we don't eat this tired breakfast every day. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, on weekdays, most Americans don't have a time to make a big breakfast. We have to get ready. We have to prepare ourselves for our day at work. So we don't have a bunch of time to cook breakfast in the morning. Yeah, so many American tend to make a simple breakfast, or they might not even cook anything. They might just eat cereal and milk. When I was in elementary school, middle school, and sometime when I was in high school, I would eat cereal for breakfast. I love cereal, and it wasn't a bad breakfast. I actually enjoyed it, and I'm sure many of you probably enjoy cereal as well. It's good, so there's a reason why it's so popular among people everywhere in the world. So many Americans eat cereal on the weekdays, but on the weekend we like to eat a bigger breakfast. You are probably seen the American breakfast in TV shows or movies where the family sit down and eat eggs and bacon and pancakes and all kind of things like that. We don't do that every weekend, so this is definitely something that we do often. We like to go out to restaurant to eat breakfast there. So we don't to cook pancakes at home, but we want someone else to cook pancakes for us. So we go out to some breakfast restaurant on Saturday and Sunday. This is pretty common. I did it a lot when I was growing up with my family, or even as an adult. I still do this a lot.
So, breakfast in other countries,
So breakfast in other countries. So breakfast in other countries. In other countries.
besides America,
Beside America. So breakfast in other countries beside America
is very different.
is very different. Is very different. Different is very different.
Right? I haven't traveled to many countries.
I haven't traveled. 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 I haven't traveled to many countries. I haven't traveled to many countries. So,
But in the countries where I have traveled to,
but in the countries where, but in the country, but in the countries where, I don't know. But in the countries where I have traveled, I have traveled before. I have traveled to. I have traveled to.
I've noticed big differences
I've not not. I've no not big differences. Big differences. Not big differences
in the type of breakfast that people eat.
entire breakfast, entire breakfast, in the entire breakfast people eat. People eat. So breakfast in other countries besides America is very different. I haven't traveled. I have not, or I haven't. I haven't. I have not, or I haven't. I haven't traveled to many countries, but in the countries when I have traveled to, I have not. I have not big differences in entire breakfast people eat.
So in Europe, for example,
So in Europe, for example, so in Europe, for example, in Europe, for example,
breakfast is very small.
oh, breakfast is very small. Breakfast is very small. Breakfast is very small.
Right? I was really surprised
I was really surprised. Were really surprised. I was really surprised. I was really surprised. I was really surprised. Surprised. Surprised.
when I first went to Europe.
When I first went to when I first when I first went to when I first went to Europe. When I first went to Europe.
When I was in Spain and in Portugal.
When I was in Spain and Portugal, I don't know this this country name. When I was in Spain and Portugal, right?
I realized that breakfast is not a big meal there.
I realized that breakfast is not a big meal. I realized that breakfast is not. I realized that breakfast is not a big meal.
Right? If you're from Europe, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
If you are from Europe, you know exactly. You know exactly. You know exactly. You know exactly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. What I'm talking. What I'm talking about. If you're from Europe, you know exactly what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about.
For many Europeans,
For many European, for many Europeans, for many Europeans,
breakfast is simply a piece of bread with
breakfast is
some
simply
butter.
breakfast is simply breakfast is simply a piece of a piece a I don't know, a piece of bread, with some
Or jam.
butter or jam, with some butter or jam.
Toast, I should say.
Toast, I should say. Toast, I should say.
Buttered toast or
Butter toast. Butter toast. Butter toast.
toast with jam.
Toast or toe with them. Toe with them. Toe, butter toast or toe with
Or some
them.
kind of sweet bread
Or some kind of bread or some kind of with or some kind of bread or some kind of sweet bread or some kind of sweet bread or some kind of sweet bread
or something like that.
or something like that or something like that.
Plus orange juice or coffee.
Plus oranges plus oranges or coffee.
Right? And that's it. Maybe in France, people might just eat a croissant.
That's it. Maybe in French. Maybe in French. People might eat. People might eat croissant. Croissant. I don't know. Croissant.
And a cup of coffee or a small espresso, and that's it.
And a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. Espresso. Espresso. That's it. Espresso. That's it.
For me, as an American,
For me as an American. For me as an American.
ooh, that's tough.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough. That's tough. That's tough.
That's not easy for me to eat.
That's not easy. That's not easy for me to eat. That's not easy for me to eat.
And not eat anything else. right? I want a little bit more than that.
And I want a little bit. I want a little bit more than that. Okay. So breakfast in other countries besides America is very different. I haven't traveled. I haven't traveled. I haven't traveled to many countries. But in the countries when I have traveled to, I have noticed big differences in type of breakfast people eat. So in the Europe, for example, breakfast is very small. I was realized surprised when I first went to Europe. When I were in Spain and Portugal, I realized I realized that breakfast is big. It's not big. It's not a big meal. If you are from Europe, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, for many Europeans, a breakfast is simply a piece of bread with some butter or jam, toast. I should say, butter toast or toast with jam or some kind of sweet bread, or something like that. Plus orange juice or coffee. That's it. Maybe in France, in France, many in France, people might eat scotches and a cup of coffee or espresso. That's it. For me, as an American, that's tough. That's tough. That's not. That's tough. That's not easy. That's not easy for me. That's not easy for me to eat. That's not easy for me to eat and uh, not eat anything else. I want a little bit more than that. I want a little bit more than that. Okay.
But I know that some people don't want to eat that much for breakfast.
But I know that some people I know that some people don't want to eat that much for breakfast. That's much for breakfast. But I know that some people don't want to eat that much for breakfast. That's much for breakfast, right? Okay,
Right? I understand that.
I understand that. I understand that. I understand that.
And I'm sure some of my listeners in other places around the world
And I know, and I'm sure some of my listener, I'm sure some of my listener in other country, in other places, right? In other places around the world, around the world,
have even different styles of
have even different style, have even different styles,
breakfast, not
style breakfast, styles of breakfast, style of breakfast.
just like American or European, but
Not just like, not just like, not just like American or European.
but something else
but something else,
that I just don't know.
but something, but something else, but something else that's I just don't know. That's I just don't know.
So I'd be interested to learn about breakfasts all over the world.
I have just I have interested. I have been interested 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 to learn about breakfast all over the world. But I know some people don't want to eat that much for breakfast. I understand that, and I'm sure some of my listeners in other places around the world have even different style of breakfast. Not just not just like not just like American or European, but something else that I just don't know. I have been interested to learn about breakfast all over the world.
And my typical breakfast
And me, my typical breakfast, and me, my typical breakfast, and me, my typical breakfast
is kind of like an American breakfast.
is kind of like American is kind of like an American breakfast, an American breakfast.
Typical American breakfast. Nowadays, my wife usually cooks me eggs, bacon, and maybe even hash browns.
My wife usually, my wife usually cook. My wife usually cook me egg, bacon, and maybe even hash brown, and maybe even hash brown, hash browns,
Or toast or something like that.
or toast, or something like that, or something like that, or something like that.
Hash browns are potatoes
Hash brown or potatoes.
that we eat for breakfast.
Hash brown or potatoes. Potato that we eat for breakfast. Hash brown. Hash browns. Just hash brown are potatoes. Potatoes. We potato that we eat for breakfast. And me, my typical breakfast is kind of like an American breakfast. My wife usually cooks me eggs, bacon, and maybe even hash brown or, or toast or something like that. Hash browns are potatoes that we eat for breakfast.
I don't really know how to describe them very well.
I don't really know. I don't really know how to describe them very well. I don't really know. I don't really know how to describe them very well.
They're kind of fried.
There's kind of they're kind of there's kind of fried
Or maybe they're not.
or maybe they're not. Or maybe they're not. Or maybe they're not.
I don't know, but
I don't know.
they taste very good.
But the taste very good. The taste very good. But the taste very good.
You've probably seen them before.
You probably seen them before.
They're called hash browns.
They're called hash brown. They are called hash brown. They are called hash brown. They are called hash brown.
So I sometimes eat that.
So
And usually
I sometimes eat that.
we also eat some fruit for breakfast.
Usually we also eat fruit for breakfast. Or we also eat fruit for breakfast.
So mango, papaya, apples, something like that. Or maybe yogurt, maybe a little bit of vegetables. There's different options, but I definitely.
So mango, papaya, apples, something like that. Or maybe yogurt, or maybe a little bit of vegetable, a little bit vegetables. They're different. There are different options. There's different option.
Definitely love my bacon and eggs for breakfast.
But I definitely love my bacon and egg for breakfast.
I love that combination.
I love that combination.
It's one of my favorite breakfasts.
That's one of my favorite breakfasts. That's one of my favorites. That's one of my favorite breakfast. That's one of my favorite breakfast. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my. Oh, I don't know. That's one of my favorite breakfast. So breakfast in other countries besides America is very different. I haven't traveled to many countries, but in the countries I have traveled to, I have noticed big differences in the type of breakfast people eat. So in Europe, for breakfast, for example, breakfast is very small. I was really like I was really surprised. I was really surprised when I first went to Europe. When I were in Spain and Portugal, I realized that breakfast is not a big meal. Breakfast is not a big meal. If you're from Europe, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For many European, breakfast is simply a piece of bread, some with some butter or jam, toast, I should say, butter toast or toast with jam or some kinds of sweet bread or something like that. Plus or orange juice or coffee. That's it. Maybe in France, people might eat a croissant and a cup of coffee or espresso. That's it. For me, as an American, that's tough. That's not easy for me to eat and not eat anything else. I want a little bit more than that. But but I know that some people don't want to eat that much for breakfast. I understand that. I'm sure some of my listeners in other places around the world haven't have having different style of breakfast, not just like Americans, Europeans, but something else that I just don't know. I have been interested to learn about breakfast all over the world, and my typical breakfast is kind of like an American breakfast. My wife usually cooks me eggs, bacon, or maybe even hash browns or toast or something like that. Hash browns are potatoes that we eat for breakfast. I don't really know how to describe them very well. They're kind of fried, or maybe there's not. I don't know. The taste very good. So probably you you probably just you probably seen that before. You probably seen them before. They're called hash brown. I sometimes eat that. Uh, we usually eat fruit or breakfast for breakfast. So mango, papaya, apples, something like that. Or maybe yogurt, a little bit vegetable. There are different options, but I definitely love my bacon and egg for breakfast. I love my combination. That's one of my big. That's one of my favorite breakfast. That's one of my favorite breakfast. That's one of my favorite breakfast.